Cleanth Brooks is one of a handful of people who influences the literature of this world. He is a literary critic, and some very knowledgeable people say of him our best critic of our best literature. But Cleanth Brooks, who's our guest, is to be symptomatic of something much more important and something that I really want to go into. For a time, this great literary critic was right here in Louisiana as a professor at Louisiana State University. And with him were some other folks like Robert Penn Warren, who's only won 3 Pulitzer Prizes for both poetry and novels. And we had them here in Louisiana. And then, in the words of a recent novel, something happened, and we lost them. And thereby lost an opportunity for Louisiana to be a center of learning and knowledge and enlightenment. And this story is in some ways a tragedy. And Professor Brooks will cast no aspersions. He's a meticulous man, but it'll be fascinating for us to learn what happened. Welcome to Louisiana Legends, Professor Brooks.
Thank you.
You came to LSU in 1932.
That's right.
The Depression was roaring.
That's right. I was extremely lucky to get a job. And as I've reflected many times since, I was extremely lucky to come to LSU for reasons I can explain later.
What was the LSU of 1932 and the Baton Rouge of 1932 like?
Well, I hardly recognized it when I came back years later. It was an interesting town. You had pretty good food in the residences. There were almost no good restaurants. 3rd Street was the shopping street. It didn't sprawl. It was compact. It was much smaller.
What was the population then, sir? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember, but it would have been around 50,000, 30 to 50,000 rather than now.
How about the enrollment at LSU then?
I really don't know, but I would guess that after all, it had been a small state university. Now it was growing apace. I think I remember that the faculty was tripled in size in 10 years. And the student body was growing rapidly. It moved to the new campus, pleasant old plantation site, where it, of course, now is. And there was a great deal of sense of vibrancy and hustle and bustle in the air, a great sense of rawness, too, of course.
Was the Depression very obvious? In other words, could you look about and there it was?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. All of my friends, some of my relatives in other parts of the South, we were all hit hard. The joke was that the South had been under permanent depression for 100 years, so we didn't get it as bad as other people. But we got it bad enough. I bought a suit, a Sunday go-to-meeting suit for $15.
Yes, sir.
And was glad to be able to buy it. Yes, it was a great blow to the country, and those of us who went through it will never forget it.
But the Depression, as a catalyst, produced some of our great American literature, didn't it?
Well, I don't know that it did directly, but it was certainly a kind of testing period, and the braver spirits and the more dauntless ones survived, and I guess others got discouraged and fell by the way. I couldn't say that it directly did it. I think it produced a good many novels which turned out not to be so good. It produced, for example, in the 30s, the proletarian novel. Well, the motives of the writers of the proletarian novel were good. They were aghast at the Depression. They wanted society to be reformed. But as literature, it was all too much close to pamphleteering. Character, description, depth of insight went by the board. So directly, it didn't help. Indirectly, as a great testing time of men's souls and hearts, I think it was good for the artistic community and the literary community.
Sir, you were a young, instructor or professor?
I came in, curious enough, as a lecturer. I came in as a kind of special species. I didn't have a PhD. I had not gone to one of the big Ivy League schools in the East or one of the great Middle Western universities like Michigan or Wisconsin. I'd gone directly from Tulane with a MA, BA from Vanderbilt, MA Tulane, to Oxford. 3 years there. Different world, different system of education. I decided to do the English degree, the one they still swore by, the honors BA with tutors, not the classroom thing, and so on and so on. So I got an honors BA, which looked like going back or repeating. It really wasn't. And my last year, a Bachelor of Literature. But most American universities didn't know what a Bachelor of Literature meant. Is it a PhD or isn't? Do you have a union card or don't you? So I had a very knowing and interesting department head, old Dr. Reed, who was a fine old scholar. And he knew he'd been at Oxford as well as having his degree from Heidelberg, Germany. He knew what the degree meant. He said, oh, come on. And they gave me, instead of starting me as an instructor, they put me in as a lecturer, which is the kind of anything you want to mean by it.
Yes.
But I moved up from lecturer to assistant professor, then to associate professor and professor.
Sir, about that time, the Southern Review began, or was started. And let me say for those who do not follow the world of literature, that the Southern Review was a literary publication, publishing articles, poetry, fiction, ideas, and it became perhaps the preeminent literary review right here out of Louisiana in the nation. There was how did the Southern Review get started, Professor Brooks?
Well, the story is fairly complicated. I'll try to make it as brief as possible. The dean of the graduate school, who was another Oxford man, Charles Pipkin, wanted the university, as it began to pick up a big, fine opera, amateur opera, and was building a big football power. Why don't we have, he must have told the president, a university quarterly? We began, however, by slow steps. We joined forces with SMU for its Southwest Review. They were in debt. They'd had a good, solid magazine. We would share the editorship and help pay out the debt. So we worked with them for 2 or 3 issues. And then, I don't know whether nudged again by Pipkin or whether this was President Smith's idea, he suddenly came to Warren one Sunday afternoon and said, how much would it take for us to fund a review all our own? And when could you get it out? The university was going to celebrate its 75th anniversary that summer. Can you get one out by summer? This was January.
Yes.
And Warren took the brave gamble and said, yes, I think we can. And came in immediately, talked to me about it. We went to Pipkin. The thing was arranged. Pipkin is by far the senior person who had a good deal to do with getting both of us here. Became editor, Warren and I managing editors, and a fine young graduate student whom Warren had known earlier in Memphis, business manager, but the title was a misnomer. He really became a managing editor, read manuscripts right along with us.
His name?
Albert Erskine, and he is now, he's now retired from Random House. But he has been a great editor at Random House for years and years. Faulkner's editor for 14 years, last 14 years.
So he also at LSU.
He was also here.
Tell me about the young Robert Penn Warren.
Well, I had met him first in Vanderbilt when he was a senior and I was a freshman. Fortunately, I met him through a series of good luck accidents. So when I got to Oxford, he was already there, and he remembered me, and I saw a lot of him then, the year we overlapped at Oxford. And later on, in 1934, after I'd been here 2 years, he was induced to come down from Vanderbilt, which was really squeezing him out, according to Warren. They still under the grip of the Depression, didn't have the place. We got him here. And very soon after he came here, the review was started. And it was
Did you recognize, let's talk about Warren for a moment.
Sure.
Did you recognize in the young Robert Penn Warren, was the talent obvious?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If you had, in a sense, told, certainly if you had even a vague literary sense, and I can't claim much more for mine than that, yes, it was plain. This was a comer. He's a man of ideas. He was a man tremendously interested in poetry. He was already publishing poetry.
Were your own aspirations at this time, we're talking about back in the 30s,
Yeah.
to write or be a critic?
Well, I wanted to join the Republic of Letters in any capacity.
In any capacity.
What I did write some poems. They're not very good. I've never wanted to republish them, though a few have been. I published in some decent magazines. But the impulse was not strong. All these other things were coming in and attracting my interest, and I preferred to do what I thought I could do best, and be a critic, try to be a good critic, rather than a third-rate poet. And I wasn't told sure I would be better than a third-rate.
Is talent miraculous to behold? Here's what I mean.
Yes, it is.
A manuscript comes across your desk,
Yeah.
and you see talent.
Yeah.
Is it a wonderful thing to
Oh, yeah.
experience?
Yes, it is, and it's wonderful and mysterious. I remember a student, young man from the Cajun country, came in and handed me a story, and it looked pretty good to me. I was surprised how good it was. Took it to Warren. Warren hit the ceiling. This is wonderful. We grabbed it like that. This was a sophomore, I think, at LSU.
Goodness.
Happily published it. Published one more story from it, and he sank beneath the waves. He became a doctor, probably a good doctor. But anyway, it flashed up. The talent was clearly there. But he didn't go on to carry it further.
Now, sir, there was someone else in Baton Rouge at that time. Mr. Erskine was married to the great short story writer
Yes.
Katherine Ann Porter.
Yes.
She was in Baton Rouge also,
Yes, she was in Baton Rouge.
Was she participating with you all in literary endeavors? Or?
Well, she was living here in town. She was was already becoming known outside of a small circle of critics as fine writer. We published a good deal of our material in the Southern Review. She was very generous in letting us have it. And then moved on to, I think upstate New York, and she moved all over the world.
But she was here. In
Oh,
Baton
yeah,
Rouge.
she was here.
Now, how about Eudora Welty? Did y'all ever bring her down from Mississippi? Did she?
Yes, Warren was in Italy that summer. We had got some stories from her, which we liked very much, and started publishing them. So we had a letter from Jackson, Mississippi, in which this young woman said she'd like to come down and pay us a visit. Warren was away. I remember my wife and I entertained her the first time. I think it must have been 1937, 38. Charming girl, who when she first wrote to us said, I didn't know whether I want to do photography or fiction.
Wow.
She did a lot she has done a book of photography,
Yes,
the Depression era. Wonderful person. And they were popping up all over the country.
So, sir, with all of you here in Louisiana, was Baton Rouge for a time a kind of literary community?
Well, that is much better for somebody else to say. How am I to say?
Well, exclude yourself.
Self-serving. Well, exclude myself, in my opinion. I'll put it another way. A lot of people thought we were.
Yes, sir.
We had more subscribers, I think, at one time in Japan than we had in Louisiana.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was given free, the Southern Review, to the faculty.
Yes, sir.
But I think that's a mistake. We were up to a kind of poetry, publishing kind of poetry and fiction, which they didn't understand. And if you give something away, for most of it, it's going to be valueless.
Yes.
So we had people on the campus who appreciated the review. And when the review was finally discontinued, there was a very...
Well, before we get to the
Yeah.
discontinuance, because that will be, of course, the tragic part of the story. Before we get to that, how long did it take for the Southern Review, published in Baton Rouge, to take off and become acknowledged?
I think it's
literary
fair
community?
to say we once did a dossier, old clippings. They're probably in the files of the library now. I think within 2 years, we were getting fine reviews from all over the country, some from England, certainly plenty from New York. I remember someone from Harvard came down and was laughing at us, said, you know, we've had to get another copy subscribed, a second subscription to the Southern Review. The students at Harvard are reading the one we've got all to pieces.
Isn't that interesting? When you and Robert Penn Warren were working on the Southern Review, Were you aware that he was doing some writing?
Oh, yeah.
Based though on the governor of the state,
Well,
Huey Long, which of course was All the King's Men.
Yeah. I read 2 of his novels that he wrote with us, which he's never published. He had already done a lot of work. Yes, he actually did most of the work on All the King's Men just after he left. But I've talked to him about that, and I said, this is what he had to say. He said, look, my novel has been mistaken as an attempt to do a biography of Huey P. Long. I was interested in what was in the popular domain, what you heard, what the man in the street was talking about, the impact he had made in the state. As far as trying to do any research on his actual life, I did almost none. I think he said done none at all. And of course, I put in episodes in the novel which has nothing to do with him.
Yes.
But it was mistaken, I should say, for an attempt to do, some people thought, a whitewash of Huey Long, some an exploitation. It was only really a little later that you began to get people to settle down to see, look, this is a masterpiece. It's to be taken as a masterpiece of fiction, which does throw light on the South, on Louisiana, on politics. But it is not a piece of history or sociology. That was a general story. But Bob Heilman did a review at my suggestion at the Swanee Review of the reception, the early reception of All the King's Men. Some of the reviews were laughable, we thought, trying to make it into a kind of pro-fascist novel, pro-Long novel. And he got Warren's publishers to send him 35 or 40 reviews. And his review, which you can find in the old files of the Swanee Review, is a rot of how badly people can mistake a great author. They don't do it now.
Sir, what happened then, all right, to this Southern Review, this entity that you all created?
I'm speaking as out of my own sympathies and maybe prejudices. There was the book which came out from LSU Press, which you probably know, Parnassus on the Mississippi.
Yes.
Which has pretty thoroughly researched the detail of the period. My own view is this, that the general feeling of American society then, and to some extent now, is literature is a luxury product. The country was getting ready to get into a big war. Scrap this. It's not important. We had, so far as I know, 2 people on the campus among the administration who fought for our survival. One was Hebert, the young dean of the law school. Then the other was, to our great surprise and delight, Troy Middleton, comptroller of the university.
Both really distinguished men, really distinguished.
Anyway, that wasn't enough, and the point was made, look, we've got to save money. Well, we said we will cut out 16 pages. We can keep the character of the magazine in that. But cut any more than that, we change the whole character of the magazine, we change the kind of article we get, we change the kind of review we do, and we'd rather just go down that, so we were suspended. I think the truth of the matter, I don't speak out of, I hope, too much bitterness, I don't think that there was a great deal of support for us in the faculty. There was some intensely loyal support in the faculty and among a lot of the students. The Reveille, the student newspaper, published editorial after editorial, many of the alumni.
Just out of curiosity, what was this great budget saving? How much did it cost to publish the
We had a budget of about $10,000 a year, and we got back about $3,000 in terms of subscription.
So for $7,000, the Southern Review was lost. Let me quickly say it, and as you noted earlier, it has been reestablished.
Yes, indeed.
It's proceeding brilliantly.
Very brilliantly, yes.
Did you have any dealings with Huey Long? Did you have any opportunity to observe him or see him?
I saw him once across a big hole. He came down at the time of the Diamond Jubilee celebration. I heard him speak. That's the only time. I never met him. By the time that the second issue of the Southern Review was on the press, he was dead. He never there's no reason to think that he even knew that the review existed. I never heard any comment he made to indicate that he'd seen the first issue. He couldn't have seen the second.
Yes.
There's a very interesting thing by Faulkner, might be worth repeating. And one of Faulkner's lesser-known works.
Let me interrupt by
Sure.
saying that the professor is one of the world's great authorities on William Faulkner, and his works on Faulkner are classics in their genre. Go ahead, sir.
Well, you're very kind to put it that way. I hope you're telling the truth there. Anyway, in Knight's Gambit, long story, Faulkner has one of his characters, a boy named Chick Mallison, talking a good deal of the story, and he says, "My uncle Gavin Stevens says that the best literary magazine is published down there in Baton Rouge, and probably Huey Long doesn't even know he created it."
And he was right.
I think it's true.
Yes.
I think it was a guess on Faulkner's part, but I think he's quite right. That's the only direct tribute we ever got from Faulkner, but I prize it, because I think that the Chick Mallison was speaking something of Faulkner's own opinion. I hope so, anyhow.
On a slightly different subject, one very current, in the distinguished Jefferson lecture, which you gave recently, I think in Washington, you said, and let me read this just right, that illiteracy is a national disgrace. You said that nobody wants to read anymore. Two questions. What caused this terrible attitude,
Well,
and can it be reversed?
Let me qualify that a little. I don't think I said nobody wants to, but I said far too many people, as the new reports just out from the T.H. Bell reports, the former Secretary of Education. 23 million adults are functionally illiterate at the present time. A vast number of our younger people who can read do not read even one book a year. What I said, therefore, was entirely too many of us who can read don't read, just don't pay any attention to books. We read much lighter stuff or watch the TV. It would take a book to answer that question, and I'm not capable of writing a book, except that TV, which I enjoy so much, I have 2 sets, I'm not against TV, for sports, for documentaries, for Shakespeare play when well done, or good play of modern period when well done, that supplies such instant gratification with practically no effort on the part of the viewer. It's a little effort, you know, to read something.
Yes.
Put it in your own mind and assist in the creation. That has certainly been one big factor. But I think that when I'm just back from Japan, April, I understand I was given a figure like that before I ever got to Japan. Japan is 99.3% literate. No wonder they're teaching us lessons now about technology.
So illiteracy catches up with a civilization.
I think it will. I think it has to. Well, try to get a job and not be able to fill out an application form, or try to move up in your job and not be able to write a decent account of yourself.
I think it's interesting, and we should share with our viewers, that after leaving Louisiana State University, that over the years you returned here, I think, twice and taught for a time.
Yes, I did.
Do you like to come back here, Professor?
Very much. My wife's a New Orleans girl. My family lived in Louisiana a number of years. I was technically, at least, a Rhodes Scholar from Louisiana when I went to Oxford. Yeah, there are many ties and associations. I have very pleasant memories, and I learned a lot. It was extremely good for me to start off at LSU. It was a test of all kinds of things. If I had been fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to get immediately into Big Eastern University, the possibilities wouldn't have opened up. I wouldn't have been tested with this. I wouldn't know as much about what goes on through the breadth of the land. I love Yale. It's a wonderful place. But I'm very thankful for those earlier years and a very different kind of place. But coming back, I came back invited in 1970 for a semester's teaching, and then again in 74. It seemed to me that the university had much higher standards, generally. My graduate students and my undergraduate students, seniors, were excellent. How good the freshmen were then, I can't tell you. They will be much better. Well, I'll put it this way. LSU will be fortunate if they are not very much like the run-of-the-mill freshmen in most big state universities. But the top is extremely good at LSU now, I would say.
I want to thank you for sharing your extraordinary experience and vision and insight. Cleanth Brooks is a national treasure, and that we had that treasure in our midst and let it slip through our fingers. Perhaps we the people can learn something by this. And sir, it's been a great honor being with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.